Hey Lily, this is Aunt Tanny. I just wanted to say hi and I wanted to share one of my favorite stories with you. It's from the series called Chronicles of Narnia and it's called The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. The Dawn Treader is this ship that's on the front and it exists in a land called Narnia. In this story, there are 4 kids who live in London and they find a portal to this magical land called Narnia. So this is the 5th book into the series. So basically they used to be kings and queens, and every once in a while they get called back to this country to help because there are evil people, there are wars, and there's battles. Aslan is a really important character. He's a lion and he is a creator of Narnia. This is chapter 1. It's called The Picture in the Bedroom. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. His parents called him Eustace Clarence, and masters called him Scrubb. I can't tell you how his friends spoke to him, for he had none. He didn't call his father and mother, but Harold and Alberta. They were very up-to-date and advanced people. They were vegetarians, non-smokers, and teetotalers, wore a special kind of underclothes. In their house there was very little furniture, very few clothes and beds, and the windows were always open. Eustace Clarence liked animals, especially beetles, if they were dead and pinned on a card. He liked books if they were books of information, and had pictures of grain elevators or of fat foreign children doing exercises in model schools. Eustace Clarence disliked his cousins, the 4 Pevensies, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. But he was quite glad when he heard that Edmund and Lucy were coming to stay, for deep down inside him he liked bossing and bullying, and though he was a puny little person who couldn't have stood up even to Lucy, let alone Edmund, in a fight, he knew that there are dozens of ways to give people a bad time if they are in your home and they are only visitors. Edmund and Lucy did not at all want to come and stay with Uncle Harold and Aunt Alberta, but it really couldn't be helped. Father had got a job lecturing in America for 16 weeks that summer, and Mother was to go with him because she hadn't had a real holiday for 10 years. Peter was working very hard for an exam, and he was to spend the holiday being coached by old Professor Kirk, in whose house these 4 children had had wonderful adventures long ago in the wars. If he had still been in that house, he would have had them all to stay, but he had somehow become poor since the old days, was living in a small cottage with only 1 bedroom to spare. It would have cost too much money to take the other 3 all to America, and Susan had gone. Grown-ups thought her the pretty one of the family, and she was no good at schoolwork, though otherwise very old for her age, and Mother said she would get far more out of a trip to America than the youngsters. Edmund and Lucy tried not to grudge Susan her luck, but it was dreadful having to spend the summer holidays at their aunt's. "But it's far worse for me," said Edmund, "because you'll at least have a room of your own, and I shall have to share a bedroom with that wretched stinker Eustace." The story begins on an afternoon when Edmund and Lucy were stealing a few precious moments alone together. And of course they were talking about Narnia, which was the name of their own private and secret country. Most of us, I suppose, have a secret country, but for most of us it is only an imaginary country. Edmund and Lucy were luckier than other people in that respect. Their secret country was real. They had already visited it twice, not in a game or a dream, but in reality. They had got there, of course, by magic, which is the only way of getting to Narnia, and a promise, or very nearly a promise, had been made them in Narnia itself that they would someday get back. You may imagine that they talked about it a good deal when they got a chance. They were in Lucy's room, sitting on the edge of her bed and looking at a picture on the opposite wall. It was the only picture in the house that they liked. Aunt Alberta didn't like it at all. That was why it was put away in a little back room upstairs. But she couldn't get rid of it because it had been a wedding present from someone she did not want to offend. It was a picture of a ship sailing straight toward you. Her prow was gilded and shaped like the head of a dragon with wide open mouth. She had only 1 mast and 1 large square sail, which was a rich purple. The sides of the ship, what you could see of them, where the gilded wings of the dragon ended, were green. She had just run up to the top of one glorious blue wave, and the nearest slope of that wave came down toward you, with streaks and bubbles on it. She was obviously running fast before a gray wind, listing over a little on her port side. By the way, if you're going to read this story at all, and if you don't already know, you had better get into your head that the left of a ship, when you're looking ahead, is port, and the right is starboard. All the sunlight fell on her from that side, and the water on that side was full of greens and purples. On the other it was darker blue from the shadow of the ship. "The question is," said Edmund, "whether it doesn't make things worse looking at a Narnian ship when you can't get there." "Even looking is better than nothing," said Lucy. "She is such a very Narnian ship." "Still playing your old game?" said Eustace Clarence, who had been listening outside the door, and now came grinning into the room. Last year, when he had been staying with the Pevensies, he had managed to hear them all talking of Narnia, and he loved teasing them about it. He thought, of course, that they were making it all up, and as he was far too stupid to make anything up himself, he did not approve of that. "You're not wanted here," said Edmund. "I'm trying to think of a limerick," said Eustace. "Something like this. Some kids who played games about Narnia got gradually balmier and balmier." "Well, Narnia and balmier don't rhyme, to begin with," said Lucy. "It's an assonance," said Eustace. "Don't ask him what an assonance is," said Edmund. "He's only longing to be asked. Say nothing, and perhaps he'll go away." Most boys on meeting a reception like this would either have cleared out or flared up. Eustace did neither. He just hung about grinning and presently began talking again. "Do you like that picture?" he asked. "For heaven's sake, don't let him get started about art and all that," said Edmund hurriedly. But Lucy, who was very truthful, had already said, "Yes, I do. I like it very much." "It's a rotten picture," said Eustace. "You won't see it if you step outside," said Edmund. "Why do you like it?" said Eustace to Lucy. "Well, for one thing," said Lucy, "I like it because the ship looks as if it was really moving, and the water looks as if it was really wet, and the waves look as if they were really going up and down." Of course Eustace knew lots of answers to this, but he didn't say anything. The reason was, at that very moment, he looked at the waves and saw that they did look very much indeed as if they were going up and down. He had only once been in a ship, then only as far as the Isle of Wight, and had been horribly seasick. The look of the waves in the picture made him feel sick again. He turned rather green and tried another look. Then all three children were staring with open mouths. What they were seeing may be hard to believe when you read it in print, but it was almost as hard to believe when you saw it happening. The things in the picture were moving. It didn't look at all like a cinema either. The colors were too real and clean and outdoors for that. Down went the prow of the ship into the wave, and up went a great shock of spray. Then up went the wave behind her, and her stern and her deck became visible for the first time, and then disappeared as the next wave came to meet her, and her bows went up again. At the same moment an exercise book, which had been lying beside Edmund on the bed, flapped, rose, and sailed through the air to the wall behind him. And Lucy felt all her hair whipping around her face as it does on a windy day. And this was a windy day, but the wind was blowing out of the picture toward them, and the window was closed. And suddenly, with the wind came the noises, the swishing of waves and the slap of water against the ship's sides and the creaking and the overall high steady roar of air and water. But it was a smell, the wild, briny smell, which really convinced Lucy that she was not dreaming. "Stop it!" came Eustace's voice, squeaky with fright and bad temper. "It's some silly trick! You two are playing! Stop it! I'll tell Roberta! Ow!" The other two were much more accustomed to adventures, but just exactly as Eustace Clarence said, "Ow!" they both said, "Ow!" too. The reason was that a cold salt water splash had broken right out of the frame. They were breathless from the smack of it, besides being wet through and through. "I'll smash the rotten thing!" cried Eustace, and then several things happened at the same time. Eustace rushed towards the picture. Edmund, who knew something about magic, sprang after him, warning him to look out and not be a fool. Lucy grabbed at him from the other side and was dragged forward. By this time either they had grown much smaller or the picture had grown much larger. Eustace jumped to try to pull it off the wall and found himself standing on the frame. In front of him was not glass, but real sea, and wind and waves rushing up to the frame as he might to a rock. He lost his head, clutched at the other two who had jumped up beside him. There was a second of struggling and shouting. Just as they thought they had got their balance, a great blue roller surged up round them, swept them off their feet, and drew them down into the sea. Eustace's despairing cry suddenly ended as the water got into his mouth. Lucy thanked her stars that she had worked hard at her swimming last summer. It is true that she would have got on much better if she had used a slower stroke, and also that the water felt a great deal colder than it had looked while it was only a picture. Still, she kept her head and kicked her shoes off, as everyone ought to do who falls into deep water in their clothes. She even kept her mouth shut and her eyes open. They were still quite near the ship. She saw its green side towering high above them, people looking at her from the deck. Then, as one might have expected, Eustace clutched at her in panic, and down they both went again. When they came up again, she saw a white figure diving off the ship's side. Edmund was close beside her now, treading water, and had caught the arms of the howling Eustace. Then someone else, whose face was vaguely familiar, slipped an arm under her from the other side. There was a lot of shouting going on from the ship, heads crowding together about the bulwarks, ropes being thrown. Edmund and the stranger were fastening ropes around her. After that followed what seemed a very long delay, during which her face got blue and her teeth began to chatter. In reality, the delay wasn't not very long. They were waiting till the moment when she could get on board the ship without being dashed against its side. Even with all their best endeavors, she had a bruised knee when she finally stood, dripping and shivering, on the deck. After her, Edmund was heaved up, and then, finally, the miserable Eustace. Last of all came the stranger, a golden-headed boy some years older than herself. Caspian! Gasped Lucy, as soon as she had breath enough. For Caspian it was, Caspian the boy king of Narnia, whom they had helped to set on the throne during their last visit. Immediately Edmund recognized him too. All three shook hands and clapped one another on the back with great delight. "But who is your friend?" said Caspian, almost at once, turning to Eustace with his cheerful smile. But Eustace was crying much harder than any boy of his age has a right to cry when nothing worse than a wetting had happened to him, but only yell out, "Let me go! Let me go! I don't like this! I don't like it!" "Let you go?" said Caspian. "But where?" Eustace rushed to the ship's side, as if he expected to see the picture frame hanging above the sea, perhaps a glimpse of Lucy's bedroom. What he saw was blue waves, flecked with foam, and paler blue sky, both spreading without a break to the horizon. Perhaps we cannot really blame him if his heart sank. He was promptly sick. All right, Lily, that's the first half of Chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to reading more to you. Love you forever and always. Bye.